My mom mocked me in front of everyone. "You'll never truly be good enough." She laughed. I said nothing and left. 2 weeks later, she showed up crying at my door. I can still hear her laugh. Sharp, cruel, slicing through the chatter and clinking glasses like a blade. "You'll never truly be good enough," my mother crowed, her voice carrying easily over the hum of the packed living room. Laughter rippled through the air, some nervous, some oblivious. Relatives, family, friends, even the neighbors from next door turned their heads toward me. Their smiles faltered, unsure whether to laugh along or look away. I stood there, frozen, a plate of half-eaten pie trembling in my hand. It was supposed to be a celebration. Dad's birthday. A family reunion. Something wholesome, something normal. But I should have known better. With my mother, every gathering came with strings attached, and every string eventually became a noose. She looked at me, grinning like she was telling a private joke everyone else was too slow to catch. And maybe they were. Maybe only I understood the real punchline, because this wasn't a one-time thing. This had been my life. I opened my mouth, maybe to say something, maybe to finally defend myself after all these years. But no words came. Instead, I felt it all, the familiar cocktail of shame, rage, and bone-deep sadness, knotting in my chest. So I did the only thing I could do. I put down the plate, turned around without a word, and walked out the door, leaving the noise and the laughter and the judgment behind me. The night air was cold against my skin, but it felt cleaner than anything inside that house. As I walked to my car, I heard her voice one last time, drifting through the open window. "Honestly, he's so sensitive." The engine roared to life, drowning her out. And I drove into the night, carrying a silence that was heavier than anything she'd said. But that silence? It was the beginning of something. Something she didn't see coming. The days that followed were heavy, thick with a kind of sadness I couldn't quite name. At first, I told myself it was just one bad night. A cruel joke, a slip of the tongue. Something that could be explained away if I tried hard enough. But the thing about silence, real silence, is that it makes you hear everything you've been trying to ignore. I stayed home. I stopped answering calls. I didn't reply to the awkward, half-hearted texts from cousins. "Hey man, she didn't mean it. You know how she is." Yeah. I knew exactly how she was. And now, with nothing to distract me, the memories came pouring back. Not just that night. Not just one bad moment. All of it. The soccer games she missed but still criticized when I didn't win. The birthday parties where the candles barely burned before she found something to scold me for. The college acceptance letter I was proud of, the one she shrugged at because it wasn't Ivy League. "You could have done better," she said that day, and somehow I still thanked her for her advice. I sat alone in my apartment, old photo albums scattered around me, looking for something, anything, that would prove it hadn't always been this way. But the harder I looked, the more obvious it became. The cracks had always been there. I was just too desperate for love to see them. And somewhere in that quiet, bitter reflection, a decision began to form. Something new. Something frightening, but exhilarating in a way I'd never felt before. Maybe I didn't have to keep trying. Maybe I didn't have to keep proving myself to people who decided a long time ago that I'd never be enough. Maybe it was time to stop. Not just for a while. Not until the next apology that would never come. But for good. 2 weeks. It took 2 weeks of absolute silence for me to finally understand something that should have been obvious all along. I didn't owe her anything. Not my time. Not my explanations. Not even my anger. I spent the first few days just sitting with it. Grieving the childhood I thought I'd had. Grieving the mother I wished she'd been. It felt like mourning someone who was still alive. But somewhere along the way, that grief hardened into something stronger. Resolve. I didn't call. I didn't write. I blocked her number. Quietly. Without ceremony. No dramatic goodbye, no final confrontation, Just a clean break, as clean as I could make it. And then, I turned inward. If she was right, if I really was never good enough, then fine. I would be good enough for myself. I threw myself into my work like a man possessed. Projects I had been too hesitant to take on. I volunteered. The promotion I thought I'd never deserve? I earned it. Not for her. For me. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected, the ones who always asked if I was okay even when I said I was fine. I started running again. Lifting weights. The first mile almost killed me, but each day I came back stronger, faster. I even signed up for therapy, something I never thought I'd have the courage to do. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, the life I thought was too far out of reach began to take shape right in front of me. I wasn't the boy she had tried to mold with criticism and mockery. I was a man now. One who was learning, maybe for the first time, what it meant to choose himself. And with every step forward, the past lost just a little more of its grip on me. It happened on a Tuesday evening. The kind of evening that felt almost normal. The sun was setting in soft gold behind the skyline, my dinner was still warm on the counter, and I just finished a call with a friend, laughing, actually laughing, something that had once felt so rare. Then came the knock. At first, I thought it was a delivery I forgot I ordered. But when I pulled back the curtain and looked through the window, my stomach dropped. It was her. My mother. Standing there in the fading light, clutching her coat around her like a shield, eyes puffy, cheeks streaked with tears. For a moment I didn't move. Just watched her through the glass, the way you might watch a ghost from a safe distance. She knocked again. Softer this time. Almost a plea. I opened the door, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. To see for myself. To know. Please, she choked out, before I could even say anything. Please, just let me explain. Her voice was cracked and broken in a way I had never heard before, not even during the worst fights. For a flicker of a second, the old instincts kicked in. The part of me that wanted to fix it, to make it better, to comfort. But this time, I stayed still. Silent. She stepped closer. I've been so wrong, she said between sobs. You're my son. I can't lose you. I studied her carefully. And that's when I saw it. Not sorrow for what she had done. Not regret for all the years of cruelty. No. What I saw was fear. She wasn't afraid of losing me because she loved me. She was afraid of losing the control she had held over me for so long. She was terrified of what my silence meant. Terrified that for the first time, I wasn't chasing after her approval. And in that realization, I felt something shift inside me, a quiet, powerful strength I didn't know I had. I stepped aside, just enough for her to walk in, but I didn't invite her. She hesitated, then crossed the threshold like a woman walking into a courtroom where she already knew the verdict. Inside, the apartment felt smaller somehow, like it was straining under the weight of all the things we weren't saying. She stood near the doorway, wringing her hands, casting anxious glances around the room, anywhere but at me. For a few seconds, the silence stretched so thin I thought it might snap. Finally, she spoke. I know I've said things, she began, her voice thick with tears. Things I didn't mean. I was under stress. I didn't think you'd take it so seriously. I tilted my head slightly, studying her like a stranger. So seriously? I echoed, my voice calm, almost curious. You mean, when you said I'd never be good enough? She flinched. The words hit her harder than I expected. Good, I thought. Let them finally land where they belong. Sweetheart, she tried, stepping closer. You know how families are. We tease, we say things we don't mean. I smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile she was hoping for. You didn't say it once, I said. You said it my whole life. Her mouth opened, ready with another excuse, another deflection. But I held up a hand, just a simple, small motion, and she stopped. You belittled me when I succeeded. I continued, my voice steady but heavy, like a stone being lowered onto the table between us. You mocked me when I failed. You compared me to everyone else, anyone else, and somehow, I always came up short. No matter how hard I tried. I took a slow step forward. And when you saw that you couldn't break me with words anymore, you laughed at me. In front of everyone. Tears were sliding down her face now, thick and messy. But I had no pity left to give. You want forgiveness, I said quietly. But you don't even understand what you're asking for. She shook her head, sobbing now. I do. I'm sorry No, I said, cutting through her wails like a knife through fog. You're sorry that you lost control. You're sorry that I walked away. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you can't undo it. Her legs gave out, and she sank onto the couch, covering her face with trembling hands. But I stayed standing. I had been on my knees for long enough. I spent years trying to be the son you could be proud of. I said, my voice lower now, softer, but heavier with the truth I had carried like a stone in my chest. But I finally understand something you never wanted me to learn. I don't need your pride. I don't need your approval. I don't need you. She looked up at me, mascara streaked down her cheeks, her hands clutching the air between us like she could pull me back with sheer desperation. I am not that scared little boy anymore. I said. I know my worth now. And I don't measure it by your standards. The words hung there, final, undeniable. She opened her mouth again, one last broken plea. But I was already walking to the door. And this time, I wasn't the one leaving. I held it open, silent. She stood up slowly, like her body weighed more than it ever had. Please, she whispered. I looked her straight in the eyes. And I said gently, firmly, with a clarity that shook me to my core. Goodbye, Mom. And then, without another word, I closed the door. I stood there for a moment, hands still on the handle, breathing hard. On the other side, I heard her sobs. I heard the shuffle of her feet as she lingered, maybe hoping I'd change my mind. But I didn't. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. And it felt like stepping into sunlight after a lifetime underground. I didn't move for a long time after she left. I just stood there, hands still pressed to the door, feeling the vibration of her footsteps fading down the hallway. The apartment was so quiet, it almost hurt. But it was the kind of quiet I had earned. Not the suffocating silence of walking on eggshells, but a vast, open stillness. The kind that felt clean. I walked back to the living room, sat down in the same chair where she had stood weeping moments ago. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I let myself feel everything. It wasn't just sadness, though there was plenty of that, curling cold around my ribs. It was anger too. And a deep, aching exhaustion. But woven through all of it, to my surprise, was something else. Relief. An almost dizzying sense of freedom. For so long, I'd lived like a prisoner trying to earn my release with good behavior. Now the warden had left. And the key was in my own hand. I knew it wasn't over. The guilt would come. The second guessing. The ache for the mother I wished I had, not the one who raised me. But I also knew something deeper, something unshakable now. I wasn't going back. Not ever. I spent that evening quietly. No TV blaring to drown out my thoughts. No phone buzzing with apologies that wouldn't come. Just me, sitting with the wreckage and the relief, sipping coffee gone cold in my hands, watching the city lights blink like distant stars. Somewhere out there, my mother was probably still crying. Still convincing herself that she was the real victim in all of this. Still waiting for me to come running back, like I always used to. But I wouldn't. Because I finally understood the cost of doing so. And I wasn't willing to pay it anymore. That night, as I crawled into bed and stared up at the ceiling, I realized something small but staggering. I wasn't empty. I was clearing space. Space for better things. For peace. For real love, the kind that didn't come with strings attached. I closed my eyes, feeling a strange, quiet gratitude settle into my bones. Not gratitude for what she did, but gratitude for what it taught me. She had spent her whole life trying to make me believe I wasn't enough. And in the end, she only taught me to believe that I didn't need her permission to be whole. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. No alarm, no blaring noise, just a strange, restless energy pulling me out of bed. For a moment, I lay there, staring at the cracked ceiling. The weight on my chest, the one I had carried for years without even knowing it, was gone. It felt strange. Almost wrong. Like waking up after carrying an injury so long you forgot what it was like to move without pain. I got up, pulled on my running shoes, and stepped outside. The city was still half asleep, bathed in a pale, silver light. The streets were empty except for the sound of my own footsteps, steady and sure. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs threatened to give out. Not to punish myself. Not to prove anything. But because I could. And somewhere, maybe on the 4th or 5th mile, as my heart pounded and my breath tore from my lungs, it hit me. I was alive. Fully. Finally. I spent that weekend doing little things, things that maybe seemed small to anyone else, but to me, they were monumental. I signed up for a course I had always put off because someone told me it wasn't practical. I reconnected with old friends, letting them pull me back into laughter that didn't feel forced or heavy. I started cooking again, not microwaving whatever was easiest, but actually cooking. Savoring. Living. Piece by piece, I was building something no one could tear down. Not my mother. Not anyone. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting for a disaster. I wasn't bracing for the next cruel comment, the next backhanded compliment, the next moment that would make me question whether I was enough. I knew the answer now. I had always been enough. I just needed to believe it myself. As the days passed, I started to see something else too, something that surprised me. I didn't hate her. I didn't even want revenge. I didn't need an apology or an explanation anymore. Because what I needed, what I had craved my whole life, wasn't her love. It was my own. And now I had it. It came sooner than I expected. About a week after she showed up crying at my door, I got a letter. Not a call. Not a text. An actual handwritten letter, something she hadn't done since I was a kid. For a few minutes, I just sat there holding it. It was strange how something so small, a thin envelope with my name scrawled in her familiar looping handwriting, could feel so heavy. I thought about throwing it away unopened. Burning it. Pretending it never arrived. But curiosity, or maybe just the need for closure, got the better of me. Inside, it was exactly what I expected. Apologies, woven together with excuses. I was under so much pressure. I didn't know what I was saying. You're being too sensitive. It wasn't an apology. It was an attempt at erasing the damage. A way to say, let's just pretend it never happened. And somewhere near the bottom, tucked between the lines, was the real plea. I miss you. Please call me. Let's go back to the way things were. The way things were. Those 5 words stuck in my throat like a splinter. I set the letter down, pressing my fingers against my temples, feeling the old tug. The part of me that wanted to fix it, to salvage some version of a family I never really had. It would have been so easy to pick up the phone. To pretend. To fall right back into that old, sickening rhythm. Her hurting me. Me excusing it. But I didn't. Instead, I folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it away in a drawer, not to revisit, but to remind myself. A marker. A line drawn in ink and memory. Because the truth was clear now. Forgiveness didn't have to mean reunion. I could forgive her in my heart, wish her peace, even, and still protect myself. Still choose myself. I didn't call. I didn't write back. I didn't break the silence. I simply lived. Quietly, stubbornly, joyfully, without her voice in my ear, telling me I wasn't enough. Weeks passed. Then months. The seasons shifted, summer bleeding into fall, and with it, something in me shifted too. The anger faded first. Not because she earned my forgiveness, but because I realized anger kept me tied to her just as tightly as guilt did. And I didn't want to be tied to her anymore. The sadness lingered a little longer, like a familiar shadow at my heels. I allowed it to walk beside me without shame. Because losing the idea of a mother, the idea I had clung to my whole life, was a kind of death. And grief, even messy grief, deserved to be honored. But even the sadness grew quieter with time. And in its place something else bloomed. Peace. Real peace. It wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself with fireworks or some dramatic epiphany. It came softly, like waking up one morning and realizing the pain wasn't the first thing you felt anymore. I started noticing little things. How much lighter my apartment felt. How I smiled without bracing for the next cruel comment. How my reflection in the mirror no longer carried that desperate question in his eyes. Am I finally good enough? Because now I knew. I always had been. I just needed to believe it for myself, not because someone else finally told me so. One evening, I sat out on my balcony, a cup of coffee warming my hands against the cool breeze, and I thought about the journey it had taken to get here. I thought about that boy who tried so hard to win her love. About the man who finally realized he didn't have to. And I felt something like pride. The real kind. The kind that no one can give you or take away. I knew then that if I could tell that younger version of myself anything, it would be this. You are not broken because they couldn't love you right. You are not unworthy because they failed to see your worth. You were always enough. You just had to stop asking them to tell you so. I leaned back in my chair, staring up at the endless sky, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Truly, fully free. I didn't throw away the letter. I didn't burn it or tear it up in some act of anger. I kept it, tucked in the back of a drawer, like an old scar you don't need to look at to remember. Not because I wanted to reopen old wounds, but because it reminded me of the moment I chose myself for the first time. Some nights, when the city hummed quietly outside my window and the world felt softer, I thought about her. About the house I walked away from. The apologies that came too late. The boy who stood there once, desperate to be seen. But now, those memories didn't hurt the way they used to. Now, they simply reminded me of how far I had come. She taught me something, even if she never meant to. I didn't need her permission to be worthy. I didn't need anyone's. That night, sitting in the quiet, I smiled to myself, small, certain. And without any ceremony, without any more goodbyes, I closed the drawer. And kept living. For myself. At last.